Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of the Mando Talk Show here on Han Talks. First, we get here every Monday and talk about last week's episode. And today, I'm back with Dean. We're just going to say he's our reoccurring guest for the Mando Talk Show since we both love talking about it. But we're talking about the episode titled The Siege today, which is chapter 12. Are we on 12?
Yep.
Cool.
Chapter 12.
There was a lot in this episode that I didn't expect we were going to get, and I'm sure, Dean, you as well. So I know there's probably a bunch to talk about, but I didn't write down any outline for today. I wrote down a quote that I'm going to read a little later, but everything else, I don't have an outline just because I really just want to. This was a very special episode to me. Overall, I've said this 100 times on this podcast. I was not excited for The Mandalorian. I wasn't excited when it was announced. I wasn't excited weeks up to the first episode. The first season was great. I didn't have a problem with anything, but it wasn't exactly what I had wanted from Star Wars at this time. Season 2 came around, and on the first episode of the Mando Talk Show, I told everyone how I love the direction the show's going in. It feels like it found its footing, and each episode is just it goes right into where my imagination has been going for the past several years of my life. I call this show my sandbox Star Wars TV show, because it feels like the games I would play on the playground with my friends, whether it's nostalgia based or creating our own narratives and just fighting dragons and giant spiders and etc. But I absolutely love how the show is playing out. With that said, this is an open spoiler discussion. So if you haven't seen The Siege, we'll see you later. You should come back and listen to the episode later. Dean, first impressions of this week's episode.
So a little bit disappointed because the time, again, it was a little bit short, but this episode.
Yeah, I remember you were saying you wanted it to be an hour, right?
Yeah, but I think that'll be the next one, knock on wood, hopefully, because the next one's title. I don't know if that was a leak that I saw or anything, so I don't know if I want to bring it up.
No, say it. Oh, wait.
Next week's title is The Jedi. Just simple, straight online.
I hope so.
So hopefully, long episode that I was kind of talking to you about. But what this episode, overall, it was not my favorite episode. Actually, it was the worst episode of the season, in my opinion.
This one?
But that's only because what was going on. Or not what was going on, I should say. The filming seemed really low quality. There's a lot of things I don't know if you know this. There was a Game of Thrones era where one of the stuntman's arms in the background. And then certain cuts, it was Cara Dune's pistol was already being raised. Then they changed the cut scene, and then she was still raising her arm, and it was it felt really. That's not really what irked me is those small fault film issues, because Star Wars is built off that. If you ask me, it's never been about the quality of the directing, but it's definitely improved over time. But this episode was the worst episode of the season, but the best episode for lore. The overall lore of Star Wars. This episode meant so much, where that's my mind was blown. And there was only 5 minutes of that lore, but it raised so many questions. And it answered so much at the same time. It was just 5 minutes made this the best lore episode in all of these series of Mandalorian so far.
I totally agree.
I know that the week before the Rise of Skywalker came out, they didn't have an episode that Friday. The week before, I was always telling you over the phone, because I know that we called about it beforehand. I said they're taking a break because something that's going to happen in the week before it comes out means something to the lore. And all they did was confirm Force healing's a thing, because that became canon in that episode, because Baby Yoda healed Mando. But this just blew the lid off of something where it's okay, there was like they're trying to clone Palpatine. That looked like Snoke in the Bacta tanks, if you ask me. Like it looked like deformed Snokes. Like I paused on that screen. They purposely made it where you couldn't tell what it was, but it
Hmm.
looked to me, it screamed, that is Snoke. That is a deformed Snoke right there.
Me too. Immediately, that's what I thought of as well. So Dean is mostly the 5 minutes you're talking about is that scene in the lab, right? So the
And
quote I
then
have, go ahead.
and then I'm assuming the quote is from the holocron, not the holocron, but the hologram with the guy talking. All right, I
Yes.
won't. I'll
So
let you go
I
straight.
wanted to read Dr. Pershing's lines, his message to Moff Gideon, because that kind of unpacks everything we need to know about kind of where we've been and where the show might go. So here it is verbatim from the show. Dr. Pershing says, replicated the results of the subsequent trials, which also resulted in catastrophic failure. There were promising effects for an entire fortnight, but then sadly the body rejected the blood. I highly doubt we'll find a donor with a higher M count, though. I recommend that we suspend all experimentation. I fear that the volunteer will meet the same regrettable fate if we proceed with the transfusion. Unfortunately, we have exhausted our initial supply of blood. The child is a small, and I was only able to harvest a limited amount of without killing him. If these experiments are to continue as requested, we would again require access to the donor. I will not disappoint you again, Moff Gideon. And that's the end of his quote. So, right, that single message unpacked it so much, and it kind of like I had I was like kind of caught off guard because the episode it did feel like it was kind of starting out as like, oh, it's a little filler, right? This
Yeah,
is it's fine. He need to get more repairs on the ship he already repaired, but
actual
uh,
repairs.
yeah, right. I was like, I can deal with a little filler where we reunite some of the old cast and stuff, whatever. But then it hit us with that, like walking into the cloning room, and then the guy's message. So actually had to go back twice to re-listen because I was so taken off guard, and I had to listen to this again and again because it said so much in such a little amount of time. So in this message to Moff Gideon, we have the mention of midichlorians, right? I know they don't say it, but it's midichlorians. We have the blood transfusion. We have the proposal that there's a new character that we're not aware of called the Volunteer. And Moff Gideon actually has more of a, they need more blood from the child, supposedly. And and then he says again, I will not disappoint you, Moff Gideon. And this, I think I lost Dean. Well, hopefully he'll join back in for the audio listeners. Um, Dean's feed just expired. I think he's texting me right now. Yeah, he's out. We'll try again and see if he comes back.
Okay, I switched to a more stable router. I think one of my
Oh,
eros went down.
well, it's a good thing you had a secondary one. Okay, so in this really small piece of dialogue in context of the whole entire episode, it says so much. It brings up midichlorians. I know they don't say it, but M count, it's
You
midichlorians.
know what it is.
And I should have worn my midichlorian shirt today because
And know what they actually like officialized in that statement as well? My
what?
transfusion theory is a thing.
Yeah,
Like my total joke about a transfusion theory is a thing.
right. And
They
considering that
confirmed that.
everyone hears it here first, and with the bodies in the tubes that we're thinking might be Snoke. Now, this proof for the theory that Baby Yoda's blood was used to help create Snoke? Is that what we're getting at
I
here?
think I don't think it's even that. I think it's Palpatine and Snoke, because Palpatine's body in the books, they said it is deteriorating and rejecting something.
Right.
If if like it just said that we're reject like Baby Yoda's blood was being rejected, that is at least kind of hinting at whether it was the child or somebody else. It just confirmed that it actually was the Empire that may have started the cloning process as the fallback for Palpatine, which is
Yeah.
just great to think about because a lot of people were thinking that he just used that. I can't think of which force power it is, but basically how the dark side users could teleport their essence to somebody else, which is also canon because if Rey struck her down, or not her down, but struck Palpatine down, the essence would have transferred to Rey. But it's just there was so much. It's almost too much to unpack. Like after I texted you right after I finished
All
watching,
right.
I was like, what?
I
Like
know.
the episode wasn't great to me, but what?
It's that little moment. Another thing interesting from what Dr. Pershing said is he mentioned the fact that he fears that the volunteer uh, will be suspended from the experiment because they don't think they will suffer the same regrettable fate of the other failed attempts. So this brings up two questions. One, who is the volunteer? Is it someone we know, or is it an
It could be
unintroduced
Snoke.
character? Is
It
Snoke?
could be Snoke, where he was the volunteer, and that's why they kept regenerating him.
So
It
Snoke
could be
was
that
not
simple.
only a created being, but he was also a being before that, a completely different
Yeah.
version.
Well, you've never seen something just truly created from the ground up in Star Wars. That's not how cloning works, at least not in our world. Now, this is Star Wars that we're talking about, so it
Right.
could be that they just had to make their own thing, but it's not like Anakin built C3PO because that's a
Right.
robot. We know that he built. Um, when the Chosen One was willed into existence in canon and some of the Darth Vader comic books and other comic books, um, basically Anakin was willed into existence, but through natural processes. We haven't heard of I genetically engineered a being.
Right.
So in Snoke has to start from somewhere, and was Snoke somebody that was just because let's be honest, we know Snoke was some rich alien in the
Yeah.
galaxy because gold garb and everything like that, and just the attitude, and also what we know about the Kylo comics where he did have some presence. We can kind of assume that he had to get rich somehow. Was
Right.
he gold rolled or whatever that saying is by the Empire? Was he just funded in whatever he was doing, and then basically that's how he got rich? Maybe it was we're going to clone you and give you force powers because he did have the force. But there's so much to unpack there where I think the volunteer is Snoke because
Interesting.
we haven't seen somebody genetically created. We've seen clones. Clones are genetically created, but that was through we already have the DNA template and moving that over. It's not we're gonna form this DNA template and then it also explains Snoke's scars. We always thought he may have gotten in a battle with somebody
Right.
and like Luke or like that. Now it's like were the scars actually from just the forming process of the cloning? Because we do know he's a
Right.
clone. We never really revisited that. Is this where the original Snoke has all those issues? Or was what we saw in Force Awakens the original Snoke? And that was the damage that he
Yeah.
suffered from being here. There's a lot of ways that they could take this.
And in the cloning tube, you can kind of see on the head of this being a little scar there, which is
Exactly.
it's got to be Snoke. If it's not, it's a great misdirect. But I, anyway, the second question that brings up is let's say that Snoke is the volunteer. Okay, this project is being helmed by Moff Gideon, and Moff Gideon is obviously in this scenario working under Palpatine's order to play out this experiment. Does this get rid of the theory that Moff Gideon is a force sensitive? Because wouldn't he be the volunteer or the donor if he was? Or could he still possibly have force powers? Because I know this was a theory I've been hearing a lot before this episode.
I just don't think he's force sensitive.
You never
I
thought
think
that?
he just I've heard the theories, but I've never thought it. It was something I couldn't really buy into. Um, I also like the thought of the first person ever, like I guess in filming minus That would be a spin ended up being Force sensitive. Moff Gideon would be the first person ever to wield a lightsaber and not be Force sensitive. Not the first, because I guess the Mandalorian, just in general, whoever wields the dark saber, I guess first evil person that
Yeah.
isn't Force sensitive to wield a lightsaber. So I kind of just like the thought of him being on his own, just kind of having that as his close range weapon rather than being able to do the force pull, force push, lightning, whatever the case may be.
I do too. I don't think he's force sensitive. I think one of the reasons why he's so attached to this project is because he might want to be, and he knows
Yep.
that doing this experiment would possibly get him the chance to wield that power.
The
And
blood transfusion.
exactly. And uh, Jedi diabetes. And on top of that, I think he's just an evil guy who stole a lightsaber and with the intention of probably either ruling Mandalore. Maybe that failed because Mandalore, we don't know its condition, but probably, either shut down or just closed off and decided to go with the remains of the Empire and continue trying to rebuild it, I guess. Now, do you think that we're going to see, if this was the introduction of like the first Snoke or whatever, you think we'll get more of this transition or rise of the First Order at all?
I think so. I think that's kind of what they've been hinting at with when we saw the resistance in the Spider episode,
Hmm.
because or not the resistance, but the New Republic. Um, it just because we're kind of seeing how people may want to join the First Order because you have this being that yes, we know they're the good guys, but at the same time, I feel like they're trying to hint at us why people may want to fight against the New Republic. And because that alone right there, I thought as we talked about in that episode of the podcast, I thought that was strange. So I think we are going to slowly start seeing the transition to Moff Gideon starting the helm of the First Order.
Okay, interesting. Um, I was actually considering. I do think we'll see the start of a First Order transition, rise, whatever, of this new kind of empire. But I actually, the way I see it in my head, is Moff Gideon actually will be in no part of it. My theory is that if Snoke is created, or whoever that being is, the volunteer, and it succeeds and they're created, Moff Gideon wanting that same power or privilege of the Force would be in some way a threat to this volunteer, and he would want to kill them,
Yep.
and then reestablish what's left of the Empire and make it into the First Order. So I think Moff
And
Gideon is going to be a villain on both sides of this
I
rebellion and Empire.
I actually think the series, not the season, the series will end with Moff Gideon dying. And if what we're kind of like predicting here that Snoke will basically do a force choke on Moff Gideon to just end things there, and then that'll tie into a different series. It'll be that's the like I think Moff Gideon will be the dying will be the end of the Mandalorian series and is switching over to a completely new Disney Plus series. I don't really see I see it as be a Star Wars by itself is a tied in universe, and the way
Yeah.
I see Disney Plus is they're gonna have something. We're getting the filler between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. And I feel like they're going to have multiple series tying us from that point over to here. And they're just going to keep giving us one series that, yeah, they're separate entities. They tell their own story. But then it's going to be like Mandalorian, Rise of the First Order, and things like that. And then we'll see like the final thing would just be Snoke doing a force choke on Moff Gideon and then black screen and roll credits.
I would love to see that. I think that's awesome.
Give us that suspense of just like, oh my, okay, what just happened? What's the next season? Or what's the next season?
Right. On top of that, which kind of plays into old school Star Wars motifs. Um, one thing I really want to happen, either in this season, the next, whatever, is I really want to see someone lose their hand. And I'll tell you who I want to lose their hand. I want it to be Grief
You
Karga.
monster. Did you say the child? You monster.
No, no, no.
I'm joking.
Oh, okay. No, not. Oh God, I would be in so much trouble if I said that with not only people online but my girlfriend as well. No, of course not. Grief Karga. I want him to lose his hand because, and then when he loses it, Moff Gideon can cut it off with the lightsaber, and then his response can be, "That damn animal cut my hand off," and it'll be a playback to Happy Gilmore when the alligator bit his hand off, and it'll be perfect. Come on, it's perfect. Don't you see it? It would be incredible. I'm telling you.
Uh, but yeah, I like how we're not even really talking about what happened in the episode because honestly, the episode just felt
You're
like
right.
it
You're
felt
right. We haven't talked about what the actual
only
episode.
it's only those 5 minutes that is just like, what'd you just say? Um, like the episode wasn't a good episode. It was literally the 5 minutes that just makes you talk. But I do have a question, because I want to lead back to the episode for this one thing. That room that we saw Moff Gideon in at the end,
Yeah.
my eyes, I don't tell me if I'm just being dumb. My eyes couldn't make out what the armor was on the walls. Like there was multiple armors
Oh
down the
yeah.
line. Yeah, I know they were stormtrooper armors, but like, were they for clones? Is that also what we're getting at? Is he trying to make forces of clones like purge troopers but force style? Um, or and then all the armor reminded me of Darth Vader's armor. I kept trying to, and that's why my eyes couldn't make it out because it was all black with a little bit of red here and there. And I was trying to make out what the helmets looked like. And my eyes, like I don't need glasses, but I felt like I did because it was just like, is that Darth Vader's helmet on the wall? Like as it was just panning down, because the helmets they looked like trooper helmets mixed with Darth Vader. So I wasn't sure what your take was on that, and I couldn't find any stills online.
Well, I'm pretty sure. I don't know 100%. I think those are. I think they're called either Black Troopers or Death Troopers. I don't
Death
know.
Troopers, Death Troopers,
Um,
but Death Troopers are still humans inside. The helmets are they're not robots or anything. The helmets are what makes them sound like robots because it's a language that only their helmet deciphers between the two.
are those the ones? Okay, there's one I'm thinking of that is an old like '90s EU where they're
SR
droid stormtroopers
droid.
and they are
Those aren't S.
black. I don't know. I didn't really read any '90s books about Star Wars, but that's what I heard from someone. I can't remember the name. I think it might be a droid version of a stormtrooper, but I have no idea. I think the whole Darth Vader thing is kind of funny actually, because could you imagine if that was actually it? Just a cybernetic uh Darth, just multiple Darth Vaders rolling around.
The helmets looked like a in between. It was the Star Wars fandom ZX3 experimental droid trooper.
ZX3, okay.
It kind of does look like a stormtrooper Darth Vader-ish mix, and that could be
Oh
why
yeah.
I was like, it's not a trooper helmet, but it's also like it's a trooper helmet, but it's not a trooper helmet, and I'm seeing a mix.
So
And
this is what you were thinking of?
this isn't what I was thinking of. But like the helmet looks somewhat like what I remember from, but I haven't seen any stills while they were on the wall. But it
Yeah.
was just confusing because I knew it wasn't a trooper helmet, but I knew it wasn't Darth Vader's. But it like looked like an in between to me. And that helmet on the Legends picture looks
Yeah.
like an in between, somewhat.
So this is from the comics, it looks like.
Yeah, this is from the like the expanded universe comics though. It's not from official.
Okay.
But like kind of
Interesting.
Darth Vader looking mouthpiece area.
It does a lot, yeah.
And I think that's where I got the Darth Vader first. But then the helmet, like the top part of the helmet, looked like um, a normal stormtrooper. So I was just extremely confused. But I think you're right that it could be droid troopers, the ZX3s, which cool that they're making a canon, and I just wish now I had a still to compare what this looked like to the still.
I think they'll come in next episode. I think we'll get Ahsoka. I think Moff Gideon's gonna steal the baby, and they're gonna have like this cool little battle with those whatever they are, whether they're droids or
Yep.
just stormtroopers. But I think that's what's happening in the next episode. All I know is my girlfriend told me she heard from somewhere that it's 54 minutes long next week, so we might be
Why
getting.
can't it be an hour 20?
I know, right? Um, I
Give
think
me a movie.
Friday's episode is going to be amazing. I can feel it, especially getting Ahsoka. I think Ahsoka's coming in next one. She better.
Yeah.
I'm so eager. These
It's
weeks are going
really
by so slow.
like if that leak, or I don't even know if it's a leak, but if it's truly named the Jedi, we're getting Ahsoka. And again, I think Ahsoka is going to be reoccurring. As soon as she's shown, I think it's till the end of the season. And then also, I think Dave Filoni is the director of the next episode, which is even more reason for Ahsoka to be back, because that is him reuniting with his character. And
He is directing. That was announced on IMDb.
then it's definitely
It's got to be.
Ahsoka's there. He needs to be the one to reintroduce Ahsoka. Like,
Definitely.
he introduced her from the get-go. He needs to introduce the live action version. There's nobody else that deserves that right more than him.
I think he's the one who introduced her to come into the story. I don't think anyone
Yeah.
else had any. Hey, we should put Ahsoka in. I think it's got to be Dave. And being executive producer, he's probably like, I'm doing this one.
This is my baby. Y'all do whatever.
Right. You keep Baby Yoda. This one's mine. Real quick before we wrap up, you were saying like this episode is like your least favorite of this season or whatever, and you thought it was kind of bad. Do you think that's because Carl Weathers directed it and he's never done anything this high budget before? He's never really directed since like the
Yeah.
90s either.
I maybe. Um it, like if he hasn't directed since the 90s, maybe it was just there were so many small things that you could just pick apart with it.
Yeah.
And it just kind of felt obvious what was gonna happen. Like the very beginning when they were talking about I can't think of the thing, but basically the transport tank. Um like their getaway vehicle. I said watch, they're gonna have to use that to as the getaway vehicle. They walk in, they do all this stuff, and then they walk out, and what do they use to leave? It,
Yeah.
it was all just so formulated. And then like the one thing that I thought they were gonna like try to change up with was while they were flying away and they kept trying to shoot down the TIE fighters. I was thinking maybe they'll shoot the cliff, like aim for the cliff and try to make it crash down, like rocks crash down. That was the one thing that I thought would have been an obvious turn of events, but would have been a cool thing to visualize.
Yeah.
To do that, it was just small little rocks, like not even hitting the TIE fighters. And it's just kind of like, oh,
Yeah. I I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. Maybe I was distracted by how freaking cute Baby Yoda was. Like, there's a lot of cute moments in this, especially the beginning.
oh, the beginning was
We
adorable.
We didn't even talk about the blue milk
The, begin-
macaroons.
the beginning was like obviously supposed to be trying to be a bit baby Groot though. It was so
Oh,
obvious.
totally.
It
And
was
then at
like,
the end when he threw up in the spaceship,
yeah,
Groot, all through and through.
it was like that episode was just. I feel like I feel like they did that adorably. Did that very well. Like the little woo, like when they were flying up and it was on a roller coaster.
My girlfriend sent me like 5 screenshots of just that.
Like it was still a good episode. It was just they really gave Baby Yoda more character. They
did.
keep on the Mando and the child's relationship. They keep touching on that more.
Which is why I think they're going to be separated.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. I think it's just gonna like next episode probably, as you're saying, at least once he's gonna get him back, but it's still they have to give us all that gut wrenching feeling, and then we have to see the child almost die because I don't wish for that, but it reminds us why the Empire's evil. Because again, I know we've talked about it not over one of these, but
Yeah.
we're never told why. In well, plenty of times we're told why, but we never visualize why. If you're somebody who only watches Star Wars and only the movies, not all the TV shows, you're never really told why the Empire's bad. You're just told they're bad. They're the bad
Right.
guys. They want to take over the galaxy, but you're never told why. And then they are using this as the mainstream way of saying they want to hurt a little kid, basically.
Very true. The last thought I will leave you with, which was the thought of the week provided by my girlfriend. While watching the episode, she said during the classroom scene, Baby Yoda is both too old and too young to be in that class at the same time. And that is the thought of the week. Well, that's it for today, guys, on this week's episode. On Wednesday, I will be reviewing the Star Wars Holiday Special, both the new one and the old one. Little compare and contrast. It's a great one. Trust me. Everything on social media is at Han Talks First Podcast. Reach out to me. What topics do you want to hear? And come next week, next Monday, for the next episode of the Mando Talk Show. Dean, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at SwitchDean. Title of that is The Collectionist. I'm a game collector and then Star Wars fan, so you'll get pictures and me talking about video games, that kind of stuff.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening, and may the force be with you.